Good morning. Today is Thursday the 13th. On my way to Dallas to do a little work, make a little money. Thank God for that. I'm just saying my morning prayers, and sometimes I feel like God's giving me some message that sometimes is significant. Well, not it's always significant. God's giving it to me, but the presence of thought in my mind is significant enough that I feel like it's sometimes it's not my own. It's something I need to say, and so that's what I've been thinking about this morning. And for my own personal reasons, nothing that I've actually dealt with directly, maybe just dreams or something, but nothing I've had to deal with lately. But dealing with addiction, and I think maybe just praying to God this morning, and I'm grateful, that I have such long periods of sobriety in my life. I've always denied being an addict, but the fact of the matter is, I think I'm a bit of a druggie. I've always used drugs, and throughout my life, not a whole lot of alcohol. Alcohol's never been my choice, but I've used things to bring me up, bring me down, stimulants, sedatives, whatever. Not a pill popper either. Those of you who know me. But and I'm not placing any guilt or burden on that. But I think that's what got me thinking about it. The idea of to remember, and maybe that's what he was trying to tell me, is to remember that when I encounter addicts in my life, especially in those situations where it's something I can't get away from, say a loved one, or whether it be your children or your siblings or family member, whatever, spouse. When you're dealing with alcoholic or drug addict, same thing. But when you're dealing with those addictive natures, I personally, and take it for what it's worth. It's everybody's right, has a right to believe their own way, but I have definitely come to believe that suffering is karma, and addiction is suffering. So therefore, addiction is karma. And I think the question we need to be asking ourselves is maybe, why is this karma in my life? And what can I do to balance it back out? Not to get rid of it, but to balance it back out. And I think you approach it from that aspect, it really kind of gives you a little more enlightenment on the situation. Is there some portion of this karma that you're reaping? Are you becoming the victim to this addiction, through somebody else, or even through yourself? Are you suffering with an addiction yourself, and why? And not necessarily observing our lives in the sense of, what sins have I committed that have created this? Sometimes it can be, what grace have I committed? I've gotten a greater understanding of what grace is, what sin is, and how that relates to karma. I used to just say grace and sin are karma. It's just another word for it. They just use the general word. It's not negative nor positive. It keeps you out of balance. But that's not necessarily true. There are forms of grace and sin that do not necessarily reflect on anybody else but yourself. For example, you may think you're earning grace by handing, the homeless guy some money, and if that's what your gut tells you, then maybe you are. And maybe you're doing just the opposite. Maybe you are creating sin if you're not following your gut. I don't know. That's for each of you to decide. But a form of grace that is not as intrusive, or not intrusive in the sense of you putting a judgment on somebody, or you allowing your compassions to overwhelm yourself and actually feed into somebody's addiction even longer. For example, a homeless person who turns around, takes the money, and uses it for more drugs, or simply decides that being homeless is just perfect because all they got to do is put their hand out. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that either. Let's face it. Some of the greatest leaders of our time were basically homeless people, like Buddha and Christ himself. What did they do? They went about and told their disciples, don't bring anything with you. Just put your hand out. God will provide. So who are we to judge that? But we do see suffering, and that's the difference. These aren't, a lot of times, at least in my experience, are not people going about ministering to others, but rather are people who have their hands out because they're hungry or they're in need of a fix or whatever. They're suffering. I digress. So, point being this, a fervent prayer is non-intrusive. To really, sorry, I'm distracted. I live in Fort Worth, and the big old white doomsday plane is flying over. Flies out of the airport over here. It's so creepy. It's just going by slowly. It always flies very low. Big behemoth. Nice way to wake up. Anyway, yeah, you can see it up there, but yeah, a little creepy. I guess they got to do their test flights, whatever. Anyway, so, that form of grace, prayer is a form of grace, a fervent prayer. And in my mind, asking, the one true God, the God that became man, so that he could experience, life itself in the human form, but also come to show us what life really was supposed to be about, praying to the highest power and asking that power in that power's name for someone to have compassion on them and to have mercy on them is a very strong prayer. And what makes that prayer even stronger is to just say the prayer and be done with it, be affirmed in your heart, and know that you made a difference in the right way. You didn't intrude in their life with some kind of judgment that they outwardly took in. Oh yeah, this person thinks I'm a loser. Oh, this person had to come to my house to deal with my alcoholism. Oh, this, neighbor had to come over to try and break up a fight, whatever. And I'm not saying that there's not times that you shouldn't intrude, but I think when you have those kind of interactions, you create karma, which can create that kind of grace that kind of can backfire on you, because you haven't allowed the person to pass through their own karma. You haven't allowed them to go through their own suffering, to the point that they learn the lesson they have to learn. I've always said, the lessons learned through suffering are the only ones that count. God only knows it's hard to learn a lesson through, just simple grace. Wow, look what God did for us today. Isn't that great? What do we do to deserve this? Let's learn from that. Yeah, more often than not, joy is joy. You just brace it for the moment and what it is. And I'm happy for those moments for sure. Do I learn great lessons from them? I don't know. Do I learn a lesson when you stick your hand in the fire and it burns? Yeah, you learn not to stick your hand in the fire ever again. And the more severe or the more painful something is, the deeper that lesson is learned and held on to. So sometimes suffering's necessary for people. So maybe, asking God, asking Christ for mercy on their situation and their soul, they may learn what it is they're supposed to learn or balance out the karma that they've created. As compassionately as possible. Not that our Lord isn't compassionate as can be anyway, but putting it in God's hands and leaving it there and trying to remove yourself more from the situation so you're not creating more karma in your own life might be more ideal. Anyway, love you all. God bless.